The tech mogul refused to acknowledge anyone at the Silicon Valley Gala until the Latina night cleaner appeared with her son, and everything transformed in ways no one could have predicted. This is absolutely unacceptable. How did security allow a child into the most exclusive technology summit on the West Coast? Victoria Blackstone's voice sliced through the pristine atmosphere of the Crystal Pavilion like a blade, her piercing gaze locked onto Rosa Martinez, 29, who had just stepped into the main conference hall of the Genesis Tech Center with her 10-year-old son, Diego. Rosa had no business being there. Her cleaning shift was supposed to end at 7 p.m., a full 3 hours before the evening's presentation began. But Diego had left his science project tablet in one of the executive lounges during an earlier school field trip, and his tears had convinced her to retrieve it. Security. Victoria raised her manicured hand, her platinum jewelry gleaming under the LED lighting. We have unauthorized individuals in the building. The annual Blackstone Innovation Awards brought together the most powerful figures in Silicon Valley. Admission required either a $75,000 sponsorship or an exclusive invitation. Rosa, wearing her standard gray maintenance uniform, stood in stark contrast to the designer suits that cost more than she earned in 6 months. "Mama, why is that woman yelling?" Diego whispered, clutching his tablet project about renewable energy sources. His thick-rimmed glasses had been carefully repaired with tape that morning. "Stay calm, Mijo. We'll get your things and go," Rosa murmured softly. But 2 security personnel were already blocking their path to the exit. From across the hall, Marcus Blackstone observed the unfolding drama. At 38, the brilliant CEO of Blackstone Industries was accustomed to his mother's theatrical displays of social control. Yet something about the quiet dignity of the maintenance worker and the confused innocence of her son troubled him deeply. "Marcus, darling," Victoria approached with a predatory smile. "Look at this embarrassing breach of protocol. These people clearly don't understand appropriate boundaries." Rosa maintained her composure as harsh whispers rippled through the crowd. She recognized this type of humiliation intimately. Having grown up as the only Hispanic student in elite academic programs through scholarship programs, she knew exactly how these situations typically ended. "Ma'am," the security guard stepped forward. "I'm going to need you to exit the premises immediately." Of course, Rosa responded with remarkable calm. "I only came to retrieve something my son forgot from the field trip." "How convenient," Victoria laughed with cruel amusement. "Right when the most successful entrepreneurs in California are gathered here." That's when Diego, with the unfiltered honesty of a 10-year-old, looked directly at Victoria and asked, "Why are you being so mean to my mom? She works super hard every night so I can go to good schools." The silence that followed was profound. Victoria visibly paled. Marcus watched Rosa kneel to her son's level, whispering something that made him nod bravely. There was an innate grace in that gesture, a sophistication that no amount of wealth could purchase. "Do you know anything about robotics?" Diego asked innocently, addressing the room. "My mom taught me programming by using free online courses. She's really smart." Marcus found himself moving toward them before he consciously decided to do so. Victoria attempted to restrain him by grabbing his sleeve, but he brushed past her completely. "Would you mind showing me your project?" he asked Diego, then looked at Rosa. "And perhaps you could explain the technical aspects?" The entire venue fell silent. 300 of the most influential people in technology watched in absolute shock as the most sought-after CEO in Silicon Valley was asking the Hispanic night janitor to discuss her son's science project. Rosa stared at his extended invitation as if it were a trap. But Diego whispered, "Go ahead, Mama. Show them how smart you are." And that's when something remarkable occurred. Rosa began explaining the renewable energy concepts with such sophisticated technical knowledge that it left the gathered engineers and entrepreneurs speechless. She spoke about solar panel efficiency, battery storage systems, and grid integration with the expertise of someone who clearly understood advanced engineering principles. But what nobody in that conference hall realized was that this presentation was merely the beginning of something much larger that would completely transform the lives of these privileged tech elites forever. The technical discussion ended, but the impact of Rosa's extraordinary knowledge still resonated throughout the hall. She had demonstrated such comprehensive understanding of renewable energy systems that even the professional engineers in attendance were amazed. When she and Diego finished their presentation, 300 people remained in complete silence. "Impossible," Victoria whispered, but audibly enough to be overheard. Where would someone in her position learn such advanced engineering concepts? Diego ran to his mother, beaming with pride. "Mama, everyone saw how brilliant you are." Rosa embraced her son, but her eyes remained fixed on Victoria. There was something in the Blackstone matriarch's expression that she recognized immediately, the same look that had shattered her aspirations 12 years earlier. "Marcus," Victoria pulled her son aside. "I need to speak with you immediately." But Marcus couldn't look away from Rosa. "You explained those concepts like a professional engineer. Where did you study?" The question struck Rosa like lightning. For a moment, painful memories threatened to overwhelm her. "A long time ago," she answered simply. "A long time ago?" Victoria moved closer, her eyes narrowing like a predator's. "Because I'm certain it would have been impossible for someone in your current situation to have accessed advanced engineering education." It was then that Dr. James Chen, the renowned technology journalist for Wired magazine, approached the group. He had observed the technical presentation with growing disbelief. "Excuse me," he said, studying Rosa's face carefully. "But that expertise I recognize, that approach to renewable systems integration. It's from MIT's advanced program. I only know one person who developed solutions exactly like that." Rosa's blood turned cold. She grasped Diego's hand. "We need to leave now." "Wait," Dr. Chin continued, ignoring her obvious discomfort. "You wouldn't happen to be no?" "That's impossible. Rosa Delgado died in a laboratory explosion 12 years ago." The name detonated through the room like a bomb. Victoria visibly paled. Marcus frowned in confusion. But several of the older technology executives began murmuring among themselves. Rosa Delgado, an elderly venture capitalist, stepped forward. The prodigy who was going to revolutionize sustainable energy at just 25 years old. Diego looked at his mother in confusion. "Mama, why are they talking about someone who died?" Rosa took a deep breath. 12 years of running from her past. 12 years hiding behind a new surname. 12 years believing she had escaped. But the past had a merciless way of resurfacing at the most unexpected moments. "Because," Margaret said in a cold voice of realization, "your mother is not who she claims to be." The truth was that Rosa Delgado had been the sensation of Silicon Valley's renewable energy sector. At 22, she had been accepted into MIT's exclusive clean technology program with a full scholarship. At 25, she was developing breakthrough battery technology that could have revolutionized sustainable energy. Her future seemed golden, promising, inevitable, until the night Victoria Blackstone appeared in her laboratory. "You have exceptional talent," Victoria had said that distant night. "But talent isn't sufficient. This industry has established hierarchies, and one of them is that certain opportunities don't open for certain people." Rosa had laughed dismissively. "My innovations speak louder than your prejudices." "We'll see about that," Victoria had replied with an icy smile. A week later, false allegations of stolen research circulated in tech media. Accusations of industrial espionage appeared from nowhere. Investors withdrew funding. MIT terminated her program. Within a month, Rosa Delgado was professionally destroyed, humiliated, and banned from the technology world. She had vanished, adopted the surname Martinez, and vowed never to work in tech again. She survived as a night cleaner, a food service worker, anything to make ends meet and raise Diego alone. "So," Victoria said now, her voice dripping with venom disguised as sweetness, "the famous Rosa Delgado. What a remarkable coincidence that you should appear here at the gala of the family that was so helpful to you in the past. Marcus looked between the two women, sensing a tension he couldn't fully comprehend. Mother, what are you referring to? I'm referring to justice delayed, Victoria smiled coldly. Your new acquaintance isn't just a cleaning woman. She's a professional fraud who deceived the technology world 12 years ago. Diego squeezed his mother's hand tighter. Mama, are you okay? Rosa looked at her son, then at Victoria, and finally at Marcus. She had spent 12 years believing she was a victim. But standing in that conference hall, surrounded by the same predators who had destroyed her first life, she realized something that would change everything. She was no longer the naive 25-year-old graduate student who had been caught off guard. She was a 37-year-old woman who had survived everything they had attempted to do to her. And this time, she would not be unprepared. You're correct about one thing, Victoria, Rosa said, her voice taking on a tone that made several people nearby stop to listen. I'm not the same person you destroyed 12 years ago. What Victoria Blackstone didn't realize was that the woman she had tried to break had spent the last 12 years not just surviving, but preparing. And now, back in the world that had rejected her, Rosa was about to demonstrate that some people don't merely survive a fall, they use the experience to soar even higher. In the 4 days following the technology presentation, Victoria Blackstone operated with the ruthless efficiency of someone who had orchestrated the destruction of careers before. She activated her network of contacts like a spider weaving its deadly web. Dr. Rodriguez, she said into the phone to Diego's school principal. I'm concerned about a situation involving one of your students, Diego Martinez. I have information suggesting his mother may be involved in some questionable professional activities. Across town, Rosa was in the small apartment she shared with Diego, but she wasn't weeping or hiding as Victoria had anticipated. She sat at her kitchen table with steely determination, doing something she had sworn never to do again, utilizing the skills she had developed over 12 years of survival. Diego worked on his homework in the living room, unaware of the storm gathering. Mama, why are you looking through those old files? Just organizing some documents, Mijo, Rosa replied, carefully examining each paper she had preserved for years. Academic transcripts, proof of residency, but primarily detailed patent applications and photographs with timestamps that told a very different story from the one Victoria had spread 12 years ago. The phone rang. It was Dr. Elena Rodriguez, principal at Diego's STEM Academy. Mrs. Martinez, I need to discuss a concern that has been brought to our attention. Some prominent donors are questioning whether Diego should continue at our institution, given certain allegations about your background. Rosa took a deep breath. 12 years ago, a call like this would have devastated her. Now, she simply smiled coldly. Dr. Rodriguez, I understand completely. How about we schedule a meeting? I have some information that may clarify these allegations. After hanging up, Rosa retrieved a business card she had kept in a drawer for years. Sarah Kim, investigative journalist and corporate accountability specialist. She had given Rosa that card 7 years ago when she discovered by chance that she was the famous missing Rosa Delgado. Sarah had been a technology reporter before becoming an investigative specialist. She specialized in cases where powerful corporations used their influence to destroy promising careers. When she met Rosa, she offered her assistance free of charge, but Rosa had declined, not yet ready to confront the past. Sarah, she said when the journalist answered, it's Rosa. Rosa Delgado. I think it's time to accept your help. 3 hours later, Sarah was sitting in Rosa's kitchen, her eyes bright with the excitement of someone who was finally going to expose long-hidden corruption. Rosa, I never stopped investigating your case, she said, opening a thick folder. Victoria Blackstone didn't just destroy you. I found at least 8 other brilliant women who had their careers ruined by the same woman over the last 25 years. She spread photographs and documents across the table. A biotech researcher, a software architect, 2 artificial intelligence specialists, a cybersecurity expert, and 3 clean energy engineers. All women of color. all with promising careers. All destroyed by the same pattern: false allegations, planted accusations, investors pressured to withdraw. Diego approached the table curiously. "Mama, what are those pictures?" "These are stories of courageous people, mi amor," Rosa replied, embracing her son. "People who were hurt, but who may one day see justice served." Sarah continued, "But here's the crucial part. Victoria doesn't operate alone. She uses a crisis management firm that specializes in character assassination. Essentially, they plant false stories and destroy people who threaten the established power structure." Rosa studied the documents with the same intensity she used to analyze complex engineering problems. "And you have proof of this?" "I have financial records, leaked communications, recordings of some conversations. But I need something more definitive. I need her to expose herself completely." It was then that Rosa smiled for the first time in days. Not a smile of happiness, but the calculated smile of someone who finally sees the complete picture. "Sarah, what if I told you that Victoria Blackstone is going to attempt to destroy me again in the next few days? What if I told you that this time, instead of running away, I'm going to allow her to get very close to success?" "That would be extremely risky." "If she manages to plant a convincing narrative, she won't," Rosa interrupted, her voice filled with a confidence that surprised even herself. "Because this time, I'm not the 25-year-old graduate student who believed that innovation was enough. Now I understand exactly how she operates." Sarah frowned. "What do you have in mind?" Rosa took out her phone and showed her a group chat conversation. "Victoria believes I'm just a frightened cleaning woman. She has no idea that for the past 12 years, I wasn't just surviving. I was learning." The conversation showed messages from a group of former employees of the Genesis Tech Center where Rosa worked. But they weren't just custodial staff. There were security guards, administrative assistants, IT support technicians, maintenance workers, invisible people who observed everything and heard every confidential conversation. "Victoria Blackstone thinks she's hunting easy prey." Rosa stood up and went to a closet from which she removed an old laptop case. Inside were external drives, printed emails, financial documents, and even audio recordings on a small digital device. "But the truth is," she continued, her eyes shining with an intensity that made Sarah realize she was in the presence of someone far more intelligent and prepared than Victoria could ever imagine, "she made me invisible for 12 years. And that forced invisibility was the biggest strategic error of her life." What Victoria didn't understand was that her next target had spent the last decade and a half not just hiding, but preparing for the day when she would have sufficient courage to fight back. And when someone who has been underestimated for so long finally decides to reveal her true capabilities, the fall of the powerful is not only inevitable, it's spectacular. The next morning, Victoria Blackstone woke up with a sense of approaching victory. She had successfully pressured 3 major donors to threaten Diego's school. She had planted seeds of doubt about Rosa's character with several influential technology executives. She was prepared to complete what she had started 12 years ago. Her phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. "Check your email. You have 15 minutes before this goes public." Victoria rushed to her computer. The email contained a single video file. When she opened it, she saw herself from the night before, in what she thought was a private conversation with her crisis management consultant. "We need to be more systematic this time," her own voice said from the speakers. "I don't want any trace leading back to us like what happened with the Patterson case and the Chin situation." Victoria's blood ran cold. She had been recorded discussing not just Rosa's case, but references to other women she had systematically destroyed. Her phone rang immediately. It was Sarah Kim from TechCrunch. "Ms. Blackstone, I'm calling to get your comment on a story we're publishing in 90 minutes. We have documentation showing a pattern of career destruction targeting women of color in the technology sector." "What kind of documentation?" Victoria's voice cracked. "Bank transfers, recorded conversations, emails. Everything is in the hands of major media outlets. The story breaks in 2 hours. Across town, Rosa was in Sarah Kim's office, surrounded by journalists, civil rights lawyers, and technology industry advocates. She was no longer the frightened cleaning woman. She was the center of a meticulously planned operation that was about to expose systematic discrimination in Silicon Valley. Marcus arrived at the office, having been called by his assistant who had seen the early reports. "Rosa, what's happening?" he asked, seeing the cameras and legal team. "You're about to discover who your mother really is," she replied, handing him a tablet. "And why she destroyed not only my career, but the careers of at least 8 other brilliant women over the past 25 years. The first pieces of evidence appeared on the screen. Audio recordings of Victoria instructing consultants to plant false stories. Financial transfers to firms specializing in reputation destruction. Emails detailing how to pressure investors and academic institutions to withdraw support. Marcus stared at the evidence in horror. Each document, each recording, each financial trail painted a picture of systematic abuse of power that would destroy the Blackstone corporate empire. At the Genesis Tech Center, Victoria was in her executive suite when she heard her own voice broadcast across multiple news networks. "A person like her should never have access to our industry. It's a matter of maintaining the natural hierarchy of innovation." She tried to contact her legal team, but the phones were overwhelmed. She attempted to reach sympathetic journalists, but they had already switched allegiances. Within hours, Victoria Blackstone transformed from respected technology matriarch to industry pariah. The story became a national phenomenon that captured public attention. Sarah Kim appeared on news programs with folders full of evidence. Victoria Blackstone used her corporate influence to systematically destroy the careers of talented women, particularly women of color, who threatened what she considered the natural order of Silicon Valley. Technology companies began canceling partnerships with Blackstone Industries. Universities removed plaques bearing the family name. The MIT Technology Review announced an investigation into discrimination in their programs. Victoria attempted a television interview to defend herself, but contradicted her previous statements and eventually stormed off the set when the host presented additional evidence. That evening, Marcus went to Rosa's apartment. Diego was completing his science project at the kitchen table, unaware that his mother had just brought down one of the most powerful families in Silicon Valley. "Rosa," Marcus said, "I need to apologize for my mother, for my family, for everything you've endured." "You don't need to apologize for someone else's crimes," she replied. "But you do need to decide what kind of person you want to be moving forward." Marcus nodded solemnly. Over the following months, he would gradually distance himself from his mother's business practices and eventually transform Blackstone Industries into a company focused on supporting underrepresented entrepreneurs. Victoria, meanwhile, found herself completely isolated in the city she had once controlled and realized she had completely underestimated Rosa Martinez. The woman she had considered nothing more than a frightened cleaning woman had spent 12 years gathering evidence and building a network of allies that was now destroying her completely. Victoria attempted one final call to Marcus, but he didn't answer. For 25 years, she had used her power to silence voices she deemed inappropriate. Now finally, it was her own voice that was being silenced by the consequences of her actions. 2 years later, the story had evolved into something even more powerful than justice. It had become transformation. Rosa had not only reclaimed her identity as Rosa Delgado, but had established the Diego Foundation for STEM Education, named after her son. The foundation provided scholarships and mentorship for underrepresented students in science and technology. The revelation of Victoria's systematic discrimination had sparked a Silicon Valley-wide reckoning that led to policy changes at major universities and corporations. Marcus had reached out to Rosa 6 months after the scandal, not romantically, but as someone seeking to make amends. He had funded the Diego Foundation and worked with Rosa to create opportunities for other victims of discrimination. Diego, now 12, excelled in his advanced placement classes and had already designed 3 renewable energy prototypes. In a school presentation, he told his classmates about resilience. "My mom taught me that when someone tries to keep you down, you don't have to stay down. You can use that experience to help other people rise up too. Victoria Blackstone, on the other hand, now lived in a modest condominium in Sacramento. Her former associates avoided her. The Blackstone Foundation had been dissolved, and she spent her days watching the growing success of the woman she had tried to destroy. In interviews, when asked about forgiveness, Rosa's response was always measured: "I forgave Victoria, not for her benefit, but for my own peace." Holding on to anger would be like drinking poison and expecting someone else to suffer. But forgiveness doesn't mean the consequences of harmful actions should disappear. Today, the Diego Foundation supports more than 800 students across the country. Diego, who inherited his mother's analytical mind and innovative spirit, already plans to follow in her footsteps as an engineer focused on sustainable technology. 12 years ago, a young engineer had been destroyed by prejudice and corporate power. But from that destruction, something more powerful emerged: a woman who transformed her pain into purpose, her humiliation into inspiration for others. True victory wasn't destroying Victoria Blackstone. It was building a future where other children like Diego would never have to experience what Rosa did. It was proving that when someone attempts to tear you down, the most powerful response is to build something beautiful that lifts others up.